From a race that vanished in a single instant to rituals happening every night that nobody can explain, these mysteries have kept players theorizing for over a decade, starting with the one that rewrote Elder Scrolls lore forever: Dwemer disappearance. The Dwemer were an entire race of super-advanced elves who built underground cities with robots and steam technology while everyone else was still figuring out iron swords. Then one day in the year 2700, every single Dwemer on the planet vanished in the same instant during the Battle of Red Mountain. Not killed, not teleported, they just stopped existing, leaving behind their cities and a bunch of machinery still running with nobody to operate it. The leading theory points to Chief Tonal Architect Kagrenak, who was basically the head scientist of the Dwemer. He built a set of tools designed to tap into the heart of Lorcan, which is the actual heart of a dead god buried under a volcano. The plan was to use the heart's power to turn the entire Dwemer race into gods. Instead, when Kagrenak struck the heart with his tools during the battle, every Dwemer everywhere just winked out of existence. The only survivor was Yagrum Bagarn, who was in another dimension at the time and came back to find his entire species gone. You can actually meet him in Morrowind, where he's diseased and crippled and has no idea what happened to his people. In Skyrim, you run into a mage named Arniel Gain, who's trying to recreate Kagrenak's experiment. If you help him with his research, he uses a replica of Kagrenak's tools on a piece of the heart. The moment he activates it, Arniel vanishes the exact same way, leaving nothing but a soul gem behind. That's the closest thing we get to confirmation that Kagrenak's ritual is what erased the Dwemer. The popular explanation in the lore community is called zero-summing. In Elder Scrolls Metaphysics, the entire universe is the dream of a sleeping god. If you become aware that you're in a dream and can't handle that realization, you cease to exist retroactively. You don't die. You're just erased from the dream. The theory is that Kagrenak's ritual forced every Dwemer to achieve divine awareness at once, and none of them could mentally handle it, so they all zero-summed. The entire civilization deleted itself from existence because their god experiment backfired harder than any mistake in history. But if that's true, why would the most intelligent race in Tamriel rush the most dangerous experiment in history during a battle? The answer connects to our next mystery in a way that changes everything, because while the Dwemer were trying to become gods, someone else found one of their weapons, and when it activated, an entire city paid the price. Winterhold collapse. Winterhold used to be one of Skyrim's major cities, the capital of its hold and home to hundreds of people. Then, in the year 4E 122, most of it collapsed into the Sea of Ghosts in a single catastrophic event called the Great Collapse. The only part that survived was the College of Winterhold, a mage academy built on a rock outcropping that somehow stayed intact while everything around it crumbled. The locals blame the mages for causing the disaster with their experiments, and the college's reputation has been garbage ever since. The official explanation is that the collapse was an aftershock from the Red Year eruption in Morrowind, which happened in 4E5 when the Ministry of Truth crashed into Vivec City and triggered a volcanic eruption that destroyed most of the province. That was 117 years before Winterhold fell, but seismic activity can have delayed effects. The problem is that Winterhold is on the other side of the continent from Morrowind, and no other city in Skyrim suffered similar damage. So either Winterhold got cosmically unlucky, or something else caused it. The real culprit is probably the Eye of Magnus, which was buried directly beneath the college at the time. The eye is a massive glowing orb of unknown origin that warps reality when activated. During the college questline, a Thalmor wizard named Anko tries to use it to reshape the world, and just turning it on starts summoning magical storms and tearing rifts in space. The college's archmage has to use an ancient staff to shut it down before it destroys everything. After the questline ends, the Psijic Order shows up and takes the eye away because it's too dangerous to leave in anyone's hands. If the eye was already underground in 4E 122 and something triggered it, the resulting magical instability would explain why the city collapsed while the college stayed protected. The mages probably had wards up that shielded their building from the eye's effects, while the rest of Winterhold got hit with reality-warping energy that tore the ground apart. They were trying to understand how gods work, so they could control divine power safely. And if you think that's the last person to make that mistake, wait until you see what one wizard does every single night when he thinks nobody's watching. The kicker is that nobody in the game actually tells you the eye caused the collapse. You have to connect the dots yourself by noticing that the only structure that survived was built directly on top of the most dangerous artifact in Tamriel. Bethesda just leaves that out there for you to figure out, which is either brilliant environmental storytelling or lazy quest writing depending on how generous you're feeling. But the Eye of Magnus wasn't done causing problems, because once you dig it up during the college quests, you realize it's not just a doomsday device. That answer almost destroyed the world. Eye of Magnus. The eye is a giant floating sphere made of an unknown material that glows with blue light and hums with magical energy. Nobody knows who made it, where it came from, or what it's actually supposed to do. The leading theory is that the Dwemer built it, since it was found buried under Sarthal, an ancient Nordic city that the Dwemer had access to. But the Psijic Order treats it like it predates even the Dwemer, which would make it older than recorded history. What we do know is that the eye can warp reality on a fundamental level. When Unkano channels power through it, the sky turns green, magical anomalies start spawning everywhere, and the fabric of space starts tearing. The Staff of Magnus is the only thing that can stabilize it, which suggests the staff was specifically designed as a control mechanism for the eye. Without the staff, the eye just keeps building power until it either explodes or rips a hole in the universe. The fact that the Psijic Order immediately confiscates it after you stop Unkano tells you how dangerous they think it is. They don't trust anyone with it, not even themselves, so they lock it away in their secret dimension where nobody can access it. The popular fan theory is that the eye was originally part of Magnus himself, the god of magic who tore a hole in reality when he left the mortal plane. That hole became the sun, and the eye might be a piece of Magnus's power that got left behind. If that's true, then the eye isn't just a weapon or a tool. It's a fragment of a god that can reshape existence, and anyone who figures out how to use it properly could rewrite the laws of magic. That's why the Dwemer might have wanted it, and it could explain why they were messing with god hearts in the first place. They weren't just trying to become gods, they were trying to understand how gods work so they could control divine power safely. Of course, we know how that turned out. And speaking of people playing with forces they don't understand, there's a wizard in Morthal who's doing something very suspicious at night. Falion's Ritual. Falion is a court wizard in Morthal who performs a ritual every night at a summoning circle in the marshes outside town. If you follow him, you'll see him raise his hands and chant in a strange language while magical energy swirls around him. He never explains what he's doing, and if you ask the townsfolk about it, they all say he's weird and probably up to no good. What they don't know is that his cure requires something most people would call evil, and that's just what he's willing to do in public. The only reason anyone tolerates him is because he's the only person in Skyrim who can cure vampirism, which he does using a filled black soul gem, and another ritual at the same summoning circle. The theories about Falion range from he's a vampire himself to he's consorting with Daedric princes. The vampirism cure alone proves he's dealing with extremely dark magic, since black soul gems trap human souls, and curing vampirism requires a filled black soul gem in a ritual. Falion has dialogue where he mentions traveling to different planes of oblivion and studying with powerful entities, which means he's been to actual hell dimensions and came back with forbidden knowledge. His nightly ritual at the summoning circle is never explained, but the fact that he does it every single night suggests it's either maintaining something or communicating with something. One popular theory is that Falion is keeping himself alive through dark pacts. He looks like a normal middle-aged man, but if he's been traveling through oblivion and studying Daedric magic for decades, he might be way older than he appears. The nightly ritual could be him renewing a bargain with a Daedric prince to extend his life. Another theory is that he's actually undead, and the ritual is keeping him functional. That would explain why he knows how to cure vampirism, and why he's so paranoid about people discovering his secrets. What makes Falion especially unsettling is that he's one of the only NPCs in Skyrim who knows things he shouldn't. If you're a vampire and talk to him before starting the cure quest, he immediately knows you're infected and offers to help without you saying anything. He can sense supernatural corruption, which means he's studied vampirism in enough depth to identify it on sight. For a guy living in a backwater town in a swamp, that's a very specific and very disturbing skill set. But Falion chose his dark magic. Some mysteries in Skyrim exist because the Dwemer built something and never bothered explaining why, like the death trap that only triggers once you're already standing in it. Kagrenzel Orb. Kagrenzel is a Dwemer ruin in the mountains of Eastmarch. When you enter, you find a large circular room with a glowing orb floating in the center. As soon as you get close to the orb, a Dwemer cage drops from the ceiling and traps you inside. Then the floor opens up and you fall down a massive shaft for about 10 seconds before hitting water at the bottom. If you survive the fall, you're at the entrance to Blackreach, the giant underground Dwemer city. If you don't survive, you just die and reload your save. Nobody knows what the orb's actual purpose was. The trap clearly works, since it's been sitting there for thousands of years, and still activates perfectly when you trigger it. The leading theory is that it's a security system designed to dump intruders into Blackreach, where the Dwemer could deal with them. But that doesn't explain why the orb itself exists, or what it's supposed to be scanning for. Some players think it's a teleporter that malfunctioned, and instead of transporting you safely to Blackreach, it just drops you down a hole. Others think it's a failed experiment that the Dwemer abandoned after realizing it didn't work properly. What makes Kagrenzel really strange is the giant skeletons you find at the bottom of the shaft. These aren't Dwemer skeletons. They're massive, easily twice the size of a human, and there are several of them scattered around the cavern. The skeletons are never explained, and they don't match any known race in Elder Scrolls lore. They're too big to be giants, who have different bone structures. Some fans speculate they're the remains of a race that existed before the Dwemer, but there's no evidence for that anywhere else in the game. They're just there, sitting in a pool of water at the bottom of a Dwemer death trap, with no context or explanation. The most likely answer is that Kagrenzel was a transportation hub that went wrong. The Dwemer built elaborate elevator systems and transportation networks throughout their cities, and Kagrenzel might have been an emergency access point to Blackreach that broke when the Dwemer vanished. Without maintenance, the mechanism that was supposed to lower people safely just stopped working, and now it's a trap that kills anyone who triggers it. The giant skeletons could be from an even older civilization that the Dwemer built on top of, which would fit with how Elder Scrolls lore works. Ancient races keep building on the ruins of older races, and eventually nobody remembers who built what. And in Ivarstead, someone paid the Dark Brotherhood to kill a mentally ill homeless man. The question isn't who died, it's who wanted him dead and why. If you are enjoying the breakdown so far and don't want to miss out on any new releases, smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Rada's death. In Ivarstead, there's an NPC named Narfi who's clearly lost his mind. He lives in a ruined house by the river and keeps asking you to find his sister Rada, who went missing a year ago. If you investigate, you find Rada's skeleton in the river near Darkwater Pass, still wearing a unique necklace. When you bring the necklace back to Narfi, he finally accepts that she's dead and goes completely catatonic with grief. Later in the game, if you join the Dark Brotherhood, you get a contract to assassinate Narfi. The client is never identified, and Narfi is just a poor mentally ill man living in a shack. He has no enemies, no money, and no reason for anyone to want him dead. The theories about Rada's death and Narfi's contract are all over the place. Some players think Rada was murdered by someone in Ivarstead and her body was dumped in the river. Others think she drowned by accident and the current carried her downstream. The fact that her skeleton is still intact with the necklace on suggests she wasn't killed by animals, since they would have scattered the bones. The Dark Brotherhood contract on Narfi implies someone wanted him dead, possibly because he knew something about Rada's death that could implicate them. But Narfi is so broken mentally that he can barely hold a conversation, so it's not clear what threat he could pose to anyone. One theory is that Wilhelm, the innkeeper in Ivers, is responsible for both deaths. He's one of the only NPCs who talks about Rada, and he seems unusually interested in whether you find her body. If you tell him you found her remains, he doesn't seem surprised or upset. He just accepts it and moves on. Wilhelm might have killed Rada for unknown reasons, and then hired the Dark Brotherhood to kill Narfi to tie up loose ends. The problem with this theory is that there's zero evidence for it in the game. Wilhelm has no motive, no suspicious dialogue, and no connection to the Dark Brotherhood. The more boring explanation is that Bethesda created a tragic backstory for Narfi, and then added a Dark Brotherhood contract without connecting the two properly. Rada's death was meant to be an environmental detail that makes Ivarstead feel lived in, and the contract on Narfi was just a random assassination quest. But because players naturally assume the two events are related, everyone spent years trying to solve a murder mystery that doesn't actually have a solution. It's either genius emergent storytelling or lazy quest design. And with Bethesda, it's honestly hard to tell which. It's either genius emergent storytelling or lazy quest design. And with Bethesda, it's honestly hard to tell which. But that murder mystery is contained to one town. What comes next only appears when you've conquered everything else in Skyrim, and it wants to fight you to the death. Ebony Warrior. At level 81, a Redguard warrior in full ebony armor approaches you and challenges you to a duel. He says he's defeated every enemy in Skyrim, conquered every challenge, and now seeks an honorable death at the hands of a worthy opponent. He asks you to meet him at the Last Vigil, a camp on a mountain peak where you fight to the death. If you win, he thanks you and dies peacefully, saying he'll finally reach Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife for honored warriors. The Ebony Warrior is one of the strongest NPCs in the game. He has maxed stats, uses high-level shouts, reflects damage, and can paralyze you with a single hit. He's clearly not a regular person. The theories about his identity range from he's a god testing mortals to he's possessed by a cursed artifact. Some fans think he's an incarnation of Raymond Ebonarm, an obscure god of war from older Elder Scrolls games who's associated with ebony armor. Others think he's the previous owner of the Ebony Blade, a Daedric artifact that corrupts its wielder and drives them to murder. The problem is that the Ebony Warrior doesn't carry the Ebony Blade, and he doesn't act corrupted. He's calm, respectful, and genuinely grateful when you kill him. The most interesting detail is that he wants to go to Sovngarde specifically. Sovngarde is the Nordic afterlife, but the Ebony Warrior is a Redguard, and Redguards have their own afterlife. The fact that he's trying to reach a foreign heaven suggests he's adopted Nordic beliefs so completely that he's rejected his own culture's religion. That level of commitment implies he's been in Skyrim for a very long time, possibly centuries. If he's been alive for that long, he might be sustained by magic or a curse that's kept him fighting long past his natural lifespan. The other clue is that he only appears at level 81, which is well past the level where you've finished every questline and become the most powerful being in Skyrim. The Ebony Warrior represents the final challenge, the last test, before you've truly beaten everything. He's the game asking if you're ready to let go and move on, just like he's ready to let go and die. It's a weirdly melancholic moment in a game that's usually about power fantasy, and Bethesda never explains who he is or why he exists. He's just there, waiting on a mountain for someone strong enough to kill him. But if you think the Ebony Warrior is the strangest person you'll meet on Skyrim's roads, you clearly haven't been traveling at night. Headless Horseman. If you're wandering Skyrim between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., you might see a ghostly rider on a spectral horse galloping past you at full speed. He's wearing a full set of armor but has no head, and he completely ignores you even if you get in his way. If you follow him, he rides along a specific route that ends at Hamvir's Rest, a cemetery near Half Moon Mill. When he reaches the cemetery, he vanishes. If you check Hamvir's Rest afterward, there's nothing there except tombstones and a journal that mentions someone was buried there after being executed. The Headless Horseman doesn't attack you, doesn't speak, and doesn't interact with anything in the game. He's just a visual detail that shows up randomly and rides to a graveyard. The popular theory is that he's the ghost of someone who was beheaded and buried at his rest, and now he's stuck in a loop, riding back to his grave every night. Some players think he's looking for his missing head, while others think he's a death omen warning you about future danger. The problem is that nothing bad happens if you see him. He doesn't trigger any quests, doesn't lead you to treasure, and doesn't connect to any larger storyline. The most likely explanation is that the Headless Horseman is a random event Bethesda added to make Skyrim feel more haunted and mysterious. He's based on the classic Headless Horseman legend from folklore, and he serves the same purpose here that he does in those stories. He's a spooky ghost that shows up at night to remind you that the world is full of unexplained supernatural events. Skyrim is a land where dragons have returned, vampires run secret cults, and werewolves roam the forests. A headless ghost riding to a cemetery is just another layer of weirdness in a world that's already drowning in it. But the Headless Horseman at least makes sense as a ghost story. And honestly, that's what makes Skyrim's mysteries great. If you want a mystery that actually affects gameplay, let's talk about the NPCs who can find you anywhere on the planet. Couriers. Skyrim has couriers who deliver letters to you no matter where you are. You can be at the top of a mountain, inside a dungeon, underwater, or in a different dimension, and a courier will somehow track you down to hand you a note. They always know exactly where you are, they never get lost, and they show up within seconds of triggering a quest event that requires mail delivery. If you try to kill a courier, another one immediately spawns to deliver the same message. They're functionally immortal and omniscient. The in-game explanation is that Skyrim has a courier network run by the Imperial government, and these guys are just really good at their jobs. The lore-friendly theory is that the couriers use magic to track people, possibly with some kind of scrying spell that lets them see where you are at all times. Another theory is that they're part of a thieves' guild operation that has informants everywhere, so they always know your location, because someone's been following you. The problem with both theories is that couriers will deliver mail even if you've wiped out the Imperial government and destroyed the thieves' guild. They just keep showing up, unstoppable and unkillable. The real explanation is that Bethesda coded couriers to always spawn near the player when certain quest flags are triggered. They're not actually tracking you across the map. The game just teleports them to your location and makes them walk up to you with a letter. It's a gameplay convenience that Bethesda didn't bother to justify with lore, so players invented their own explanations. The fact that we've built elaborate theories about a magical spy network just to explain why mail delivery works is peak Elder Scrolls fandom energy. And honestly, That's what makes Skyrim's mysteries great. Half of them are intentional lore hooks that Bethesda planted to make the world feel deeper. The other half are bugs, cut content, and lazy quest design that players decided to treat as mysteries anyway. But because Bethesda never explicitly confirms or denies any of these theories, we're all just left guessing. The Dwemer vanished because of a god experiment gone wrong. Or maybe they didn't. Winterhold fell because of the Eye of Magnus. Or maybe it was just an earthquake. The Ebony Warrior is a cursed hero. Or maybe he's just a high-level challenge with no deeper meaning. That ambiguity is what keeps people playing Skyrim 14 years later. Every ruin you explore, every ghost you encounter, every weird NPC you meet could be hiding a massive lore revelation, or could just be a random detail that means nothing. And because Bethesda never gives you straight answers, you can believe whatever version of the story you want. That's why Skyrim's mysteries are still being discussed, why YouTube channels are still making iceberg videos, and why we're all waiting to see if Elder Scrolls 6 finally explains what happened to the Dwemer. If you enjoyed this video and want to see Elden Ring's biggest secrets explained, click the video on the screen.